Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. King George Island sits at the northern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. On its southeastern coast lies a distinct topographic formation, Jenny Buttress. This was codified in 1960 by the UK Antarctic Place Names Committee, securing its official geographic record. The name commemorates a legend, an English schooner supposedly trapped in the ice of the Drake Passage in 1823. The historical account describes the crew of the Jenny being finally discovered 17 years later by the whaling ship Hope, their bodies preserved by the Antarctic cold. While the buttress remains on the map, the story itself exists as an archival illusion, a narrative that successfully transitioned into geography without the support of the historical record. The legitimacy of a maritime account often relies on its pseudo-factual payload, the structural use of specific data notes to simulate a genuine logbook. The Jenny account begins with a precise departure from the Isle of Wight in 1822, near Lima, Peru. The narrative records the ship's log ending exactly on January 17, 1823. It concludes with a verifiable date of discovery, September 1840, attributed to a Captain Brighton. This density of variables provided the necessary camouflage to evade the editorial skepticism of the mid-19th century. Tracking the origin of this data leads to Central Europe in early 1841. On February 19, 1841, the Wiener Zeitung in Vienna published the first known report of the Jenny. This initial report surfaced in a landlocked city, thousands of miles from any British or Peruvian maritime authority. 10 days later, the story appeared in Tyrol. By March 2, it printed in the Lübecker Zeitung, then reached the Brunner Zeitung. March 12, Der Siebenbürger Bote, then Die Daskalia. By March 22, the Österreichischer Beobachter. The final regional infection occurred April 22 in the Gemeinnützige Blätter. This 8-week window represents a systemic information cascade, where editors duplicated adjacent publications without conducting independent research. Following this outbreak, the story fell into a 20-year dormancy, disappearing from public print. Mid-century public interest in polar exploration eventually created a renewed market for narratives of Arctic entrapment. This interest centered on the McClintock Arctic expedition, which sought news of lost polar explorers. In 1862, the German magazine Globus reintroduced the Jenny story, placing the old newspaper account into a formal geographic layout. Globus published the text anonymously and provided no citations for its claims. Recontextualizing newspaper filler within a geographical magazine gave the account a layer of academic credibility it had previously lacked. By 1948, the myth began to infiltrate the literary record. The Australian poet Rosemary Dobson used the story as the basis for her award-winning work. Her poem, The Ship of Ice, describes a vessel becalmed and sealed in time. Dobson cited the anonymous 1862 Globus report as her primary source. In her adaptation, she extended the ship's entrapment by 20 years, setting the discovery in 1860. Such cultural adaptations further obscure the history, transforming a static hoax into a mutating legend. The institutionalization of the myth was finalized in 1960. The UK Antarctic Place Names Committee formally named Jenny Buttress, cementing the name in international records. This decision relied on secondary citations rather than a verification of primary maritime sources. In 1965, the peer-reviewed journal The Polar Record published the account. The journal's report was a translation of the same anonymous 1862 article from Globus. This created a closed feedback loop, where institutional recognition shielded the original data from further scrutiny. A strict chronostratigraphic review of the legend was finally conducted in 1989. Historian Robert K. Headland investigated the archival footprint of the Jenny and its alleged discovery. Headland concluded that no physical or documented evidence exists to support the event. There are no records of the Jenny departing the Isle of Wight, and no whaler named Hope appears in the registers for 1840. The historical architecture of the Jenny rests entirely on the lack of primary evidence. The Jenny traveled from 1841 newspaper columns to a 1960 Antarctic landmark. Its survival depended on the density of initial variables, which allowed the fiction to mimic fact. Throughout its transmission, editorial and institutional filters prioritized narrative detail over the verification of sources. The feature, Jenny Buttress, remains as a record of how archival errors can be codified into the physical world. It demonstrates that well-structured fiction can successfully masquerade as historical truth if the chain of citation remains unbroken.